He was built like a fortress, a man whose Sundays were defined by force and dominance, celebrated for collapsing pockets and controlling the line of scrimmage. Christian Barmore's name echoed through stadiums as a symbol of power, yet in Massachusetts, far from the roar of the crowd, that power was tested in a far more unforgiving arena. When reports surfaced that the New England Patriots defensive tackle faced a domestic assault charge, the story unfolded not with cheers or spectacle, but with the quiet gravity of police reports and court filings. The tension lies in the irony. A player known for imposing his will, now standing before a system where strength and fame mean nothing. In domestic violence cases, power often lives in the shadows, behind closed doors, where silence and status can overwhelm truth. But the charge itself marked a shift, turning the private into public and forcing accountability where imbalance once lived. As the case moved forward, the drama deepened not because guilt was assumed, but because justice demands process, restraint, and consequence. The same discipline required on the field now demanded in real life. The city that once cheered his dominance watched as the legal system asserted its own authority, reminding everyone that there is no scoreboard in a courtroom and no clock that can be run out. The ending of this story does not belong to highlights or contracts, but to a principle that endures beyond sport. No one stands above the law. The life lesson cuts hard and true. Power without accountability is an illusion, and real strength is revealed not in moments of glory, but in how responsibility is faced when the noise fades, and justice, quiet and deliberate, is allowed to take its course. As the legal process tightened its grip, the image of certainty began to fracture, and the story took on a darker, more complicated shape. Behind closed doors, investigators reconstructed timelines, examined messages, and weighed statements that could never fully capture what happened in private moments. While outside, fans argued, doubted, defended, and condemned, each reaction revealing how deeply fame distorts perception. The irony sharpened as the man once protected by locker rooms, contracts, and silence now faced a system that moves slowly but relentlessly, indifferent to legacy or potential. Every court date carried unseen consequences, careers hanging in the balance, reputations eroding not with noise, but with waiting. The true tension wasn't only whether the charge would hold, but what truth would survive when power no longer controlled the narrative. Because in cases like this, justice doesn't just judge actions, it exposes character. And just as the public thought they understood the direction of the case, a new development surfaced behind the scenes, one that could either unravel everything or cement accountability. Leaving a single, the case reached a critical turn as pressure mounted from all sides, and what once felt distant became immediate and irreversible. Courtrooms replaced locker rooms, legal strategy replaced playbooks, and every silence carried more weight than any statement ever could. Those closest to the situation realized the outcome would not be decided by public opinion, but by evidence, credibility, and moments that could no longer be undone. The dramatic irony lingered heavily. The very system many doubt was now the only thing standing between chaos and clarity, between narrative and truth. Careers trembled, futures narrowed, and the illusion of control finally collapsed under the slow, deliberate force of due process. Yet, just as the path toward resolution appeared to come into focus, an unexpected twist emerged, one capable of reshaping the case entirely and redefining who truly holds power in this story, leaving the fate of everyone involved hanging in uncertainty as the line between justice and consequence blurred. The weight of the case finally pressed down in ways no one could ignore, as procedural motions gave way to moments that felt dangerously close to resolution. Whispers from inside the courtroom hinted at fractures in the narrative, subtle shifts that suggested not everything would unfold as expected, and the emotional cost began to surface on every face involved. The irony deepened as the spotlight, once a shield, became a magnifying glass, exposing contradictions, vulnerabilities, and the limits of influence. What started as an allegation had now evolved into a defining crossroads, not just for one man's career, but for how power, accountability, and belief collide when the truth is no longer theoretical. Just when it seemed the direction of justice was settling into place, a late-stage revelation surfaced, one that threatened to upend assumptions and force a reckoning no side was fully prepared for, freezing the story at its most volatile moment as the question of who would ultimately pay the price remained unanswered, pulling the audience toward the uncertainty. The revelation sent shockwaves through every corner of the case, reframing earlier moments that once seemed settled and forcing all sides to confront how fragile their assumptions truly were. What had looked like a clear march toward accountability now splintered into competing interpretations, each one carrying serious consequences for credibility, justice, and truth itself. The dramatic irony intensified as the audience realized that power had not vanished. It had merely changed shape, shifting from physical dominance and fame into legal nuance, timing, and who controlled the next narrative beat. Emotions ran high, patience wore thin, and the system revealed both its strength and its vulnerability in equal measure, reminding everyone that justice is not linear, and certainty is often an illusion. Just as the court appeared ready to move toward a decisive step, an unexpected procedural turn emerged, one capable of delaying everything and altering the final outcome entirely. The final chapter arrived not with spectacle, but with gravity, as the court delivered its decision and the waiting finally ended. After months of tension, speculation, and shifting power, the system did what it was designed to do. It weighed evidence, measured credibility, and rendered judgment without regard for fame or force. In that moment, the dramatic irony completed its arc. The man once defined by physical dominance, standing equal to every other name on the docket, stripped of aura, reduced to accountability. For some, the outcome brought relief, for others, reckoning. But for the public watching, it delivered something rarer in true crime stories involving power: the feeling that the process held. Justice was not loud, emotional, or vengeful. It was procedural, restrained, and final, reminding everyone that real consequences do not need applause to matter. The lasting lesson settles in quietly but firmly. Power can intimidate, status can delay, but neither can outrun truth forever. And when justice is allowed to work, it doesn't just decide a case, it restores balance, leaving behind a cautionary reminder that what happens in private can never stay hidden from a system built to bring it into the light. In the aftermath, the silence felt heavier than the noise ever did, because what lingered wasn't the verdict itself, but the ripple it left behind. Careers moved forward, altered, trust fractured, and the illusion that talent grants immunity quietly dissolved. Fans were forced to reconcile the image they once cheered with the reality they witnessed, while the system, imperfect yet persistent, stood as the final authority when power failed. True crime rarely ends with clean closure, but with understanding. And here the understanding was stark. Accountability is not a moment, it is a shadow that follows every choice. Long after headlines fade and debates cool, the case remains a reminder that justice doesn't exist to satisfy belief or loyalty, only to restore balance, and that when power is tested by truth, it is truth that ultimately endures. Time passed, and the story settled into history. Not as a scandal to be replayed, but as a cautionary chapter etched into the wider conversation about power, violence, and accountability. The stadium lights kept turning on. New names filled the rosters, and the machine of professional sports moved forward. But the lesson refused to fade. What this case exposed was not just the fallibility of one individual, but the fragile line between public admiration and private reality, and how easily that line can be crossed when consequences feel distant. In true crime, the most important outcome is not spectacle or outrage, but awareness. The understanding that justice only works when silence is broken and process is respected. Part 8 closes not with triumph or tragedy, but with reflection. A reminder that every system is tested by how it treats the powerful, and every society is judged by whether it protects the vulnerable, leaving behind a truth that endures long after the final gavel falls. Years later, the case still surfaced in conversations about justice and power, not because of who was involved, but because of what it represented. It became a reference point in documentaries, classrooms, and quiet personal reckonings, a reminder of how easily admiration can blur judgment and how necessary it is for systems to hold firm when pressure mounts. The story no longer belonged to headlines or teams, but to a broader truth about accountability and restraint, about how real consequences ripple far beyond one courtroom or one career. In true crime, the most lasting impact is rarely the verdict itself, but the shift it creates in how society sees strength, silence, and responsibility. And Part 9 closes with that understanding settled in place, the recognition that justice is not a single moment in time, but a standard that must be defended again and again, even after the story fades from view.